Welcome to the Bush League Huddle Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Raj, and I'm joined by two guys who never play soft, my co-hosts and good buddies, Fab and Nacc.
Solid.
Week 7 is already officially in the books. Crazy. Like, we're already going to be at the midway point. It was just capped off with another doubleheader between the Chargers and Cardinals and the Ravens and Bucs, which we'll recap shortly. Afterwards, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to move on to Week 8 with our very popular Love-Hate segment, where we'll outline the matchups we love and the matchups we think you should avoid. If you missed our Week 7 Sunday recap, where we broke down the big winners and losers of the Sunday slate, be sure to check it out. We cover a ton of players and their outlook for the rest of the season. And as usual, before we get into it, please just a quick reminder, don't forget to rate, follow, and subscribe. You could find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Stay locked into those channels. As usual, we'll have a ton of content and advice to take you through to Week 8. No time to waste. Let's get right into it. Nacc, what was your key takeaway from the Monday Nighters? Excuse me.
Yeah, and it's weird, eh? When there's two Monday nights, has there ever been a Monday night so far this year where both games were good and like one is always a stinker?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
That's where I'll go with my biggest takeaway. The Cardinals and Chargers are really not good teams, real life and fantasy life. We have Justin Herbert, who's yet to hit 15 points a game this season, which is very, very disappointing from a fantasy aspect. I mean, it was kind of like we kind of knew there were going to be a running team and less passing, but I thought there would be still more touchdowns involved, and I thought he would still hit consistent, 18 to 20 point figures, and to not hit 15 is pretty disappointing. You have Dobbins, Rogers league winner, who's now under 10 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games. So that was, I think, probably the guy so far that's people spent the most fab on and probably regretting at this point. And then you have Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnson, McConkey, very, very underwhelming. I think McConkey has under 10 fantasy points in 4 of the last 5, excuse me. Palmer has 13 catches for 171 yards all season. And then Quentin Johnson, since week 2, 20 total fantasy points. So it's just been a pretty dumpster fire fantasy-wise for the Chargers. And not for nothing, and it hasn't been smooth sailings for the Cardinals either. Kyler Murray, very inconsistent and using his legs mostly to kind of salvage and save his fantasy days. If it wasn't for that long run he had yesterday, he would have had a really, really poor showing once again. Marvin Harrison Jr., 57 yards in his last 3 games. That's 10 fantasy points total. Yes, he was hurt the game before, but his last 3 games, 57 total yards.
This pisses me off so much.
You did like a Count Dracula face.
Yeah, and I think, Raj, you alluded to it, like, is Brian Thomas the better player between the two? I think you mentioned it a few pods ago, and like Brian Thomas has been way more impressive.
Yeah, I have some thoughts. I'll let you finish, Nacc. I'll have some thoughts on a few things, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, no secondary options in the passing game. Like, it's been really nothing. I thought there was going to be more like Wilson and Dortch and like McBride has been okay, but I mean, there's in wide receiver wise, like I don't know why they're not being targeted. It's just there's really nothing going on. The only real bright spot is James Conner, who's been pretty consistent through week 7 and still not injured at this point in time, which is also good news for them. But those are my big takeaways. Both really real life and fantasy life, just not great teams.
Fab, go ahead. Did you want to add something to Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I'm so frustrated with the usage of Marvin Harrison Jr. Like it's almost every other week you see a video on Twitter where he does a double cut and he runs up the seam and he's completely open and he doesn't get no targets towards him. He's supposed to be a specimen of a wide receiver, which he is, and Kyler Murray is just not throwing to him, and I do not understand why. It boggles my mind. It's frustrating. I don't get it, man. Free Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, I don't know. I have no words. I really have no words.
I agree with everything Nacc said from a fantasy perspective. I think Herbert played really well. I watched more so of that game than the Bucs game. I thought he played quite well. I think the issue is there's just not enough juice at the wide receiver position. And he threw I think it was 39 times, was it?
Yeah,
39 times.
exactly. 39 times.
349 yards passing.
But like it was literally death by 1,000 cuts, the type of offense they ran, and they just don't have enough. Like Will Disley is their like tight end. Like, are you kidding me?
They kicked 5 field goals, man.
Yeah, they kicked 5 field goals, and it's all like 3-yard routes. Like, test the team downfield. This is not like the Cardinals are not that good of a defense. Test them downfield. And I think the Marvin Harrison thing, yeah, I agree. Like Murray's not finding him, but he doesn't look explosive. And while I was listening to another podcast on the way home from work, it got me to thinking. You guys remember why he didn't want to run the 40 at the combine, and he doesn't look crazy explosive compared to Nabers and Brian Thomas. And that's what a lot of fantasy analysts were saying, is that Harrison maybe has that nicer floor, but he's not going to be that extremely explosive player. And also he dropped some balls too yesterday. So I don't know, haven't been very impressed with him. Neither have I been with Murray. And that's personally why I was like, I gotta wait and see before I draft this guy like in the first round.
Well, that was a Chris Sims post that he had where he tiered the rookie wide receivers, and he had Nabers and Thomas Jr. in the first tier, and Marvin Harrison in the second tier, and Adunze in the third, and he was getting roasted online for it. He was getting roasted, and now you look back 7 weeks later, and clearly,
that's the common name misconception. Like the big name, you hear the big name, and it's like, oh, well, why do you have him in the second tier? Well, I don't know. Look at his stats. He doesn't belong there, right? Maybe one day he will, but not right now he doesn't. Like, why? People get roasted. People get ticked off and triggered so easily with these things, and it's just like, look at the stats, man. Like, just look at them.
Yep. Fab, I think it was a rough Monday night for you with the Chris Godwin news.
Yeah,
give us your eulogy on Chris Godwin, and
I gotta get set for this one. I gotta get set for this one. Nacc, I swear to God, man, I saw the injury and I'm like, this. Bleep,
man,
mother bleep.
This hurt. This hurt you because you were really high on him. Like you were talking him up.
So myself,
but he has the stack too. That hurts both.
Okay, hold on a second. Just calm down for a second, damn it. So myself, just like other fantasy managers, I get invested in my players, and
you don't say.
And he seriously, and Chris Godwin, like I was obviously invested in him from a personal standpoint because the guy had that big injury that he came back from. He's really playing in an offense that tailors perfectly to his skill set, and you saw him really performing in that offense. And then Baker Mayfield's doing well. So, like, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Like, I didn't target Baker Mayfield and Chris Godwin when I drafted them. Like, I drafted them much later within my draft, and they're going off, and it was great for me from a fantasy perspective. So that injury last night, it gutted me. I was upset for my team, but like you feel so bad for Chris Godwin. Like you just feel so horrible.
Contract year, man.
Yeah, man. He was on a career year after having the bad ACL injury from a year ago, and it's just like it sucks, like it sucks so bad. And quite honestly, I'm also concerned from a larger perspective for the Bucs offense and even Baker Mayfield's fantasy value for the rest of the season, because also Mike Evans re-injured his hammy. He's going to miss several weeks. I heard potentially he might come back week 11 after the bye. So obviously the next few weeks is going to be a real test for Baker, despite the fact that he's been cooking for the last little while. He's going to be playing a substantial amount of games without Chris Godwin, but even with Mike Evans too. So you kind of have to question what his value is going to be for the rest of the season. I do just want to go over quickly not some stats that I saw for Chris Godwin. So this is his second major career-threatening injury that he's dealt with, having torn his ACL and MCL in 2021. And he finally felt like he was back to his old self this summer. And a lot of teammates and coaches took notice too. But one thing that I do give this guy credit for, the video of him on the cart, you can see him saying to the trainer, all right, back to work, huh? Like I'm rooting for the guy straight up.
Yeah.
There's rumors that he may not play again. On
well,
that
that's another thing too, because this might be his last game as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, because I believe this was the last year in his contract, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Oh no, that was definitely his last game as a Buck.
So
because he's going to miss potentially the first.
Well,
few
assuming
weeks
that he doesn't get
too.
signed after this as a Buccaneer, obviously with a much deeper discount. But
so Fab, that was a great eulogy on Chris. God knows, awesome. Moving forward for your team, so you mentioned you have the stack, you have Baker and Godwin.
Yep.
What's the next step? Like, who do you target? We're recording this now Tuesday night, so by the time we release it, Fab and waiver wire would have already been out. But what's your strategy on kind of supplanting that production?
Well, I think Rachaad White's going to get more receiving yard work, and you already saw that last night too. He did go 6 for 71 and 2 touchdowns. Jalen McMillan, 3rd round pick out of Washington. So Washington Huskies, played with Penix Odunze and Jalen Polk, excuse me. His stats were pretty good in college. He did get 8 targets last night. Just to read off quickly the 2023 stats, he played 11 games. He started in 7 of them. He won 45 for 559 and 5 touchdowns. But he did miss time with a knee injury as well. And it was a high-powered offense. And another interesting stat is that Jalen McMillan had 93 unutilized air yards. So that's based off of the balls being thrown in his direction, the amount of yards they would have represented in the air had they had been caught, which is, I think, 4th highest on the week or something like that. And that's a shout out to Fantasy Life's utilization report. So Jalen McMillan,
kind of like the same thing. If my aunt had balls, should be my uncle type deal.
Just saying, man, it is a important statistic. And it's
my face was doing the Zach Galifianakis.
I was just like
the calculation, like, and I love data and stats. Good.
The what if?
Nice. That's a good one.
Hey, if you're not getting targets, you're not going to get receptions, right? What did Wayne Gretzky say? Miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Just saying, it's important to know.
Michael Jordan said that.
But Jalen McMillan is a guy that I'll probably target off of waivers. Trey Palmer is interesting. Kate Auden, actually, for a tight end stream, I think he's going to get a bump in targets too. He got 10 last night. I think from a tight end perspective, he's going to be someone of note. But I would be looking at Jalen McMillan. I would be spending a little bit of fab on him, probably somewhere between about like 10%, maybe as high as 15%, depending on how needy I am a wide receiver.
Well, about your boy Shepard.
They don't have no
your boy
Shepard. Though the Shepard's more of, I don't know, man. Like that's the thing. I think his best days are behind him. Quite frankly, I know he has a really good rapport with Baker, coming from Ohio State. But apart from Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
But apart from that, I don't necessarily see him getting peppered with targets like he used to when he was with the Giants for those formidable years. But
he's actually a pretty good snap share. 65% week 4, 68% week 5, 75% week 6. He didn't play a down. It looks like he got a reception, but it says he had 0% snap share.
Is that sleeper?
This is Roto Baller.
It's probably because it's not updated yet.
You could percentage
it.
Good call.
Anyways, so long story short, very, very long story short, losing both your top wide receivers seriously hampers Baker's fantasy outlook and ceiling for the rest of the season. It's been a rough day for the Bush League Huddle podcast.
Yep, prayers up. I have Godwin 2 in a league, so I'll have to figure that out as well. So thanks for the advice, Fab, on that front. My key takeaway: Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are really good at football. When I was looking up the stats on Lamar and Derrick Henry, I couldn't stop laughing. Like, I was literally cackling at how crazy the numbers are. Lamar so far this year, 118 QB rating, 15 TDs, that's second in the league, 68% completion percentage, and only 2 INTs. He's a full yard attempt better than last year at 9 yards, and he already has 455 rushing yards, on pace for 1,100 yards.
He's putting up video game numbers right now.
Like, if he wins the MVP this year, like, I won't be upset.
This year, 100%. Like he could be the front runner.
Thank you, Nacc.
Look,
give him his flowers this year.
Look, I hate the Ravens, but we could all
drive to your house.
I think we could all agree Josh Allen deserved that MVP last year.
Yeah, I would say so.
He had 50 TDs.
I
like
mean,
guys, like
Yeah, I agree. I would
Lamar
agree.
Jackson
I
didn't put
agree.
up
I
MVP
agree.
numbers last year. This
I
year,
agree.
I hate obviously the Ravens as a Steelers fan, but what I would look stupid and uncredible if I say that he's not a front runner for the MVP. But the numbers this year, 100% show
Yeah,
it.
they're really jumping off
Like
the page.
off the chart.
Yeah.
According to Opta Stats, there have been 3 games in NFL history where a QB threw 5 or more TD passes on fewer than 25 pass attempts while also rushing for 50 yards. And Lamar Jackson has all 3 of them.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
And then when you move along to Derrick Henry, you realize the stats are even more ridiculous. 873 rushing yards, 8 TDs, 124 rushing yards per game. That's 2 fewer than his 2,000 rushing yard season that he had, I believe, in 2021.
Yeah, I'll take the L on that one. I think you will too.
I will 100% too. Yeah, I was like, oh, he's not going to play on third downs. So he's on pace for 2,100 yards, 19 TDs. Yesterday again, 15 carries, 169 yards. That
And he always
81-yard
breaks
touchdown.
a huge one.
You know who's not gonna take the L on that one? 2 fingers pointing at this guy.
Yeah, look, I have nothing to say, man. Yeah,
We're like,
well, mind you, I didn't expect this type of production though, but like I did.
Dumb on me and Nacc to be like, oh, you know what? He was bad. He was bad in Tennessee, so like that's a precursor for him to being bad in Baltimore. Like,
the first
bad,
half
but like
last
I
night,
didn't think he was going to be like. I thought he'd be. Maybe
I didn't
RB,
think he was going to be this
RB 15.
explosive.
You know?
Like, yeah, I did not see this coming at all.
So yeah, I think overall, like yesterday's episode, I said Goff was the MVP. I'm throwing that in the garbage right now. Lamar Jackson is
like, don't throw it in the garbage. Like, he's still up there, but Lamar definitely is number one.
If Lamar keeps this pace, he's on pace for 4,300 passing yards, 35 TDs, I think like 5 INTs, and I mentioned the 1,100 rushing yards. Like, and then Derrick Henry's offensive player of the year, like bar none. And I really hope this leads to Derrick Henry be going into Hall of Fame. Like, this season is like the stamp on his career to be a Hall of Famer. So those are my 2 takeaways. Those guys are very good.
But I wonder if Lamar is going to keep being the San Jose Sharks of the league and then crumble in the playoffs.
That was actually my next question. Does let's say Derrick Henry has a spectacular year, maybe not what he's on pace for right now, but like he finishes like, let's say 1,800 yards and 15 touchdowns, which is really not that crazy. But they don't win the Super Bowl. Is he still Hall of Fame? Or is he in the Hall of Very
The Hall
Good?
of Fame is not.
Hall of Fame has nothing to do with
not rings, bro. I'm the type of person that it's stats, and this guy, like, all pros, led the league in rushing in categories. He's going to be up there before the end of his career. Like, he could win 0 Super Bowls and still be in the Hall of Fame. Like, hello, Dan Marino type deal. You know, like,
yep.
I don't think
LT LaDainian Tomlinson.
That's why when people say Edelman should be in the Hall of Fame, I look at them and I'm like, for what? Like, because he won Super Bowls with Tom Brady, like, because he caught balls and he was clutching playoffs. Like, he was never leading in any stat category. Was never an All Pro. Like, I don't know. Henry right now is definitely on pace for a gold jacket.
Yep,
I like it.
Agreed. Those are takeaways for the Monday night football matchups. I believe the next doubleheader, there's 2 left, sometime week 15. So we'll move on to love-hate. So thankfully, no buys in week 8.
Wow, that's fantasy playoffs. Doubleheaders. That's Acid Monday.
Wow.
Doubleheaders. We're going to have Black Friday games. We're going to have
Christmas
Saturday
Day.
games. Saturday games is the best. Christmas Day games.
Yeah, I love Saturday games.
Steelers,
love Saturday
Chiefs,
games.
Steelers, Chiefs, Christmas Day in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, always has to go back to the Steelers. Our week 7, right? Yeah, week 7 love-hate record. We were 7-5, not bad. We were 4-6-1 in week 6, 7-5 in week 7. So Fab, you went 3-1. You won with Baker Mayfield as a love, and you also won with Bo Nix and David Montgomery as hates.
Cost me everything getting Baker Mayfield winning as a love.
Yeah, it did. You missed out on Pop Douglas as a love. He only had 3.4 points.
He was sick.
Okay. It doesn't matter.
I'll take the L. It's fine.
Yeah, it doesn't. You wrote that. I'm like, and like it would have been a push if maybe he didn't
if
dress.
He didn't play. Yeah, I get it. No, it's all
like
good.
You gave me a push last week. Nacc, you were 2-2, so you won on Brock Bowers. No shit. Whoops. Not supposed to swear. You lost on Sam Laporta. That was a
oh man,
that was
white
a
flag on
surprising.
that bad boy.
Oh,
yeah.
Laporta's dead.
Yeah. No. What Nick even mentioned it in our
Well, he
our
might have
post,
some resurgence now that
Jameson.
Williamson is going to be
Khalif Raymond, man. I believe it's going to be Khalif
2
Raymond
days.
before it's Laporta.
You're joking? Are you serious?
Why
I mean, we
would I
mentioned
not
it
be
yesterday. We
serious?
did mention it yesterday, Khalif Raymond, but
Why would I not be
again,
serious? He's just not targeting the tight end.
I think that offense.
Jameson doesn't have, even when sorry, I don't want me to cut you off, but when Jameson didn't have good games, like he hasn't been. There's games where he has 2 targets or 2 catches, whatever. Where's Laporta been then?
Yeah,
Laporta hasn't had 4. He hasn't had 4 targets all season long, right?
It's a pure scheme offense. I think they scheme guys like there's no tomorrow.
So I don't think even Jameson gone that it's a foregone conclusion that Laporta eats.
Yeah. So you won on Brock Bowers and you won on Pat Freiermuth as a hate with his 7 points. And I'm going to give you a loss on your hate for Tucker Kraft because he was the tight end 11.
Sure.
But I saw you, I think it was a valiant effort on that front. I was also 2-2.
Half point. You can move on.
I was also 2-2. I won on Drake Maye and James Cook as my Drake Maye as my love, James Cook as my hate, and I lost on Courtland Sutton as my love. 0 targets.
Dude,
fun fact.
You guys ever see that
cardio on Sunday? He's just running around doing nothing.
You guys remember Sam Mitchell, the coach for the Raptors?
Yeah.
Yes.
He had a really great quote where there was a guy, his name was Jerome Moizo, and he was just saying how, we have guys on our team, they do absolutely nothing. Look at their box score. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And it reminded me of Courtland Sutton. 0 targets, 0 catches.
Yeah, and fun fact, that's the first game in his career where he doesn't have 1 target. At least 1 target.
Yeah.
First game ever.
Yeah. And then I lost on Kyler Murray hate due to his 4th quarter run. I think I would have won on that front. So, but still 2-2. So we'll look to do better next week, week 8. Nacc, who do you like as your first love?
First love. Oh, this takes me back. First love of the week. I'm gonna go with Jaylen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So they've been both in fantasy purgatory for the last few weeks without Tua. Inexcusable by Mike Daniels and that staff to not find a way to scheme ways to get him the ball. Excuse me, but I digress. With Tua set to return on Sunday versus the Cardinals, I'm looking for both Tyreek and Waddle to have huge games. With Arizona giving up the 7th most points to opposing wide receivers. And I think they're going to have their hands full as both are going to be motivated to try to put the past few weeks behind them. I'm pretty sure, you could see how Waddle and Tyreek have been frustrated not getting the ball. And I think last week was just like the last straw. They got, 4 touches total in that game. So I think resurgence of Tua, Guardian cap is going to be very, very much needed for the Dolphins mojo, and I think they both have amazing games on Sunday.
Dude, that press conference made me so awkward. Made me feel so awkward, and it's all right, man. You do you, bud.
I was listening to McAfee, and the argument was he wears a Guardian cap and it puts a target on his head, literally and figuratively. It's that's the only thing I could think of.
No, he's gonna have a target on his head either way, really.
Yeah,
literally. Yeah, I disagree with it, but I can
it's a pretty weak argument.
Understand. But yeah, I think you know what.
Because they're too cowboy. They're too it makes you look like a fifi to
you look soft or whatever.
You look soft. Bro,
it's
Jonathan
European
Taylor wore one.
Hockey players wearing visors. You're soft.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Who's your second love of the week, Nacc?
Yeah, second love this week is going to be Kirk Cousins at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the last time Cousins played the Bucs, he scored just under 40 fantasy points. that beautiful Thursday night game. So he's been up and down this season, and he scored actually under 15 fantasy points, in 4 of the last 5 weeks. So pretty underwhelming. And the only week he scored more in those 5 weeks did come against the Bucs on Thursday night. And the Bucs are giving up the second most points to QBs this season, and just gave up 5 passing touchdowns to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. So look for Captain Cook to have a big day on Sunday.
Yeah, no
Captain Kirk, should I say? I said
even fire up
Captain
the rest
Kirk.
of the entire Atlanta offense too.
For sure.
Darnell Mooney, remember Darnell Mooney had that.
Darnell Mooney and even Drake London and your boy Roger Kalpitz. He might make it 4 games in a row with 10 plus fantasy points.
It stops at Drake London. Fab, give us your loves of the week.
So following Nacc's thematic process last week, I also went in a similar direction. I just did all running backs this week. So my first one is Aaron Jones at the Rams on Thursday Night Football. The Rams are giving up the 10th most fantasy points to running backs, and with the Vikings coming off a tough loss versus the Lions this weekend, I expect Minnesota to dominate this one from start to finish. Aaron Jones has been good. Last week versus the second-ranked defensive Detroit Run D, who are giving the least amount of fantasy points allowed. Well, second least amount of fantasy points allowed. He popped off for 93 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, 3 catches, 23 yards for 19 fantasy points. 4 out of 5 healthy games this season, he's produced at least 16 points and is a PPR stud with 20 receptions on the year, tied for 10th best. Start him with absolute confidence and get him in your lineup. I think he actually could finish as a top 5 RB this week.
Yep, I made the mistake of not starting him last week in one league, and I really regret it. So
he's looked good, man. He's looked really, really good, and he's involved in every facet of the offense. And this is going to be the first defense he plays that is like not a difficult or a tough matchup. Like it's actually a very, very, very good matchup. So I'm excited to see what he can do over here.
It's crazy what the difference without Donald does, in that run stopping game.
Yeah,
it's a great point.
Yeah,
it's a very good point, Nick. Who's your second running back, Fab?
It's your boy, Roger. It's J.K. Dobbins versus New Orleans Saints.
League winner.
What else is there to say about this potential league winner for 2024? Since taking command over the backfield with Gus Edwards' injury, he's been averaging 12.3 fantasy points per game, which is about RB28 since week 4. It doesn't really scream off the page, but this week he does get a very nice matchup versus New Orleans that have been giving up the 8th most points to running backs and do not seem like a defense that we all expected to fear in the last few weeks. Since week 5, New Orleans have surrendered an average 147 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns. They've also surrendered 10 rushing touchdowns on the year, 3rd highest in the league. The PPR floor against New Orleans defense from a running back perspective is also pretty high, with on average about 3 receptions and 35 yards. So I think JK gets lead back carries as usual. He's averaged about 69% of the carries since the bye. And I think he also finds the end zone, even puts up some low in RB1 numbers, high in RB2. Another guy I think that you can get in your lineup and you can start with confidence.
Yeah, I think this is a prime matchup where they should be in 100%. Front. They should be in front. And when they're in front, I think that's where they'll hand the ball off more to the running backs. They're not a team that plays well catching up from behind. It's very clear.
No, I think game script is going to be in their favor.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you, Fab. On my end, first matchup I love is Rico Dowdle at the 49ers on Sunday Night Football. The Cowboys are prioritizing offensive balance coming out of the bye, and Mike McCarthy is calling for more touches for Rico Dowdle. He literally said it, which I think is a smart move because they're not playing a balanced offense right now. He has 4.2 yards per carry, which is solid, and he had that really good game against the Steelers, which I think they can use as a template. Last season, the matchup against the 49ers marked a turning point for Dallas. Before their bye, they averaged 320 total yards per game, but after adjustments, they surged to 400 yards per game, with Dak Prescott finishing as MVP running up. This time, post-bye, they'll face a 49ers defense that's not as fearsome as before. We saw Kareem Hunt and Kyren Williams both post big fantasy numbers against them, 22 and 31 points respectively. And PFF has ranked the Niners' run defense 7th worst, a pretty steep drop from their top 10 status last year in 2023. If Dallas remains committed to the run and balanced, I think they could exploit this matchup and make Dowdle a sneaky flex play.
It's going to be a interesting matchup with the amount of injuries that San Fran now is piling up. So I definitely actually like that play a lot because of that. I think, like you said, if Dallas is able to control the game, then I do see him putting up some solid numbers.
Dak is throwing. Go ahead, Fab.
No, I was gonna say he has 3 straight games of 10 plus fantasy points. The only concern that I have is that he's only had more than 10 carries twice.
Yeah,
out of 5 games.
What is their love with Zeke? Can I understand?
So that's where I think McCarthy said it straight up, like they need to give the ball to Dowdle more. And I was just about to say that Prescott is throwing the ball way too much.
Yeah.
Like, just play ball control. You don't have the horses in the passing game to throw the ball 40 times a game. So it's a huge game for both teams. Like,
do we know what McCarthy's coach speak rating is?
I'm sure it's really bad. It just everything about him is bad. He's just a bad coach overall.
Do you think, like off topic here, but do you think he lasts this season?
McCarthy? Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
think
Jerry Jones doesn't fire coaches.
He doesn't fire. Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, he's cheap.
It would surprise me. Like, it would. Again, I know I'm bringing up the Steelers, but last year when they fired their offensive coordinator, like that was like the shock move because they never ever fire coaches in season. But so again, you can never say never because it happened in a franchise.
That season that Jason Garrett took over, he was the offensive coordinator. He took over head coaching duties. I forget who the head coach was.
Bill Parcells, no?
It was Bill. Was that Bill Parcells?
Really?
No,
it must have been Parcells.
No, that's long before. No.
Who was the coach before McCarthy and before Garrett?
But before Garrett would have been.
Anyways, I don't want to derail the podcast there, but
that's a good.
But I think that coach was the one that was fired mid-season.
It wasn't Parcells before Garrett.
Was it?
No, really
Parcells.
Wade
Phillips. I was in college.
There we go.
Who's who?
Phillips. Wade Phillips. That makes more sense.
Yeah, I think he was fired mid-season, and then Garrett Wilson took over. Jason Garrett took over.
Jason Garrett. Second matchup I love this week. I'm going off the cuff. I'm going off the cuff here with Cedric Tillman versus the Ravens. So I did a little scouting report. I rewatched Cedric Tillman's catches from last week against the Bengals and even his 4 for 55 game versus Denver last year. And he's clearly a big physical X receiver with strong hands, very similar to Amari Cooper. His 12 targets, 8 catches, and 81 yards led the Browns last week, and he developed some really nice chemistry with DTR and Jameis Winston. There was even buzz around him since OTAs, with rumors that he surpassed Elijah Moore on the depth chart. Panthers legend Steve Smith raved about him, and Randy Moss called him the best young receiver he's seen out of the draft in 15 years.
Wow.
The Ravens are allowing 29 fantasy points per game to wide receivers, and I think Tillman is primed for a breakout. His scouting profile is very similar to Cooper, as I said, so it feels like they knew what they were doing trading Cooper, and then they target and peppered him right away because he fits that kind of like X receiver outside role. So I think could be interesting play for flex.
They're going to definitely see better QB play now with Watson sidelined.
Yeah,
and I think Bailey Zappi is going to be the backup on Sunday
for the Browns.
They just signed him to the active roster because DTR is hurt too.
The finger, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, if Steve Smith Sr. likes him as a wide receiver, I like him.
He's the one who called Cooper Kupp being the best wide receiver in the 2017 class. Yeah. And he called it at the combine. Yeah. And I was like over Corey Davis, Juju Smith-Schuster.
Corey Davis.
Like there was a lot of guys like who went to 6 or 7 guys who went before him.
He called Jerry Jeudy being just a jag.
Yep. And he is still right on that front.
Yep.
Nacc, who's your first hate for week 8?
So probably by unpopular opinion because he's been good, but Drake Maye versus the Jets is my first hate of the week. He's been pretty much the only bright spot in an otherwise dreadful season for the Patriots so far. And he was on our love list for week 7. He's put up back-to-back 20-point games, which is great. However, he played the Texans and Jaguars defenses that give up the 7th and 2nd most points to QBs, respectively. He gets a desperate Jets team in week 8 who were embarrassed in week 7 by the Steelers. I know, another chance for a Steelers plug. Despite the 37 points surrendered, the Jets still give up the 4th fewest points to QBs. So I think the young rookie comes back down to earth and has a rough outing on Sunday.
Tough to trust week to week.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like the matchup at all.
Yeah.
Second hate of the week is going to be your boy Malik Nabers at Steelers on Monday Night Football.
Another Steelers plug.
Another Steelers plug. Sorry, guys, I've got a hard on this week with the Steelers after that game. So Nabers was in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year early on, but the concussion put a halt to that for the moment. And his first came back from a 2-game absence. He saw 8 targets, but only hauled in 4 for 41 yards. Previously, he had 18, 12, and 15 targets in his previous 3 outings before the injuries. So there are rumors of him. I know, Fab, you mentioned it yesterday, of him complaining about not getting enough targets as well. So with him battling some adversity, we see a little bit of a diva action peeking through. Things don't look like they're going to be getting better in week 8 as he gets a Steelers D giving up the 10th fewest points to wide receivers, and he figures to see a heavy dose of Joey Porter Jr. And then couple that with the fact that Daniel Jones struggles on prime time. So I see another modest game incoming for the young star rookie.
Yeah, I don't really disagree with this. I've had some people on TikTok asking me about trading for Malik Nabers and like giving up Garrett Wilson for him. And I'm like, I wouldn't do that at the moment. That I don't know how this offense is going to be looking now without. We mentioned it yesterday, right? Like with Andrew Thomas no longer there and protecting the quarterback, whoever that may be, whether it's Daniel Jones or Drew Lock. So you have to figure that targets for Malik Nabers are going to be hard to come by. I mean, diva. I wouldn't call him diva. I mean, he's just mentioning that he was open and not getting the ball. That's all. Brian Dable, the coach, did say, yeah, you were open. You need to get the ball. So, but I don't disagree with this call, unfortunately.
Sounds like
honestly, this game, next Monday night, I don't even know if I'm going to tune in. I think I might.
You're going to tune in. Would you stop? And just
great opportunity to catch up on video games for me. Actually, I might not tune in either.
Well,
my girlfriend wants to keep on.
Speaking of video games, just honorable mention: Call of Duty does come out on Friday, 2 days before the Cardinals have to play the Dolphins. So Kyler Murray might be diving into his kill streaks before he gets into the game planning. So
there should be a blacklist of players that we can't put on the hate list for the rest of the season. One of them has to be Kyler Murray, and the other one has to be Anthony Richardson, because like it's just. Like no, like until they show me something different, like I won't be accepting those as potential hates going forward.
You guys basically let me do a hate segment on Anthony Richardson yesterday, which I'm gonna repurpose anyway. So, which I think Nacc already did repurpose. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Nacc. Fab, your hates.
So I'm going to go back to that New Orleans Saints and Chargers game. And for my hate, I'm actually going to take Alvin Kamara. Saints are already they're already completely dysfunctional. Add on the fact that they're facing the Chargers this week in LA only makes me feel even less confident for Kamara. Chargers are giving up the 3rd fewest fantasy points to running backs. Chargers have surrendered only 1 rushing touchdown all season. And before yesterday's game versus Arizona, they hadn't had a rusher get more than 70 yards on the ground. So James Conner was the first one actually to hit more than 70 yards, and he got 101. Kamara hasn't hit 100-plus yards since week 2. After scoring 4 TDs in his first 2 games, he's only had 2 in his last 5. He's been held to under 15 carries in the last 3 games. The usage is very concerning. The fact that the Saints are just a mess right now with all their injuries makes me think that he'll see a lot of stack boxes and be kept up behind the line of scrimmage. He's a flex play for me, maybe low on RB2 if he gets lucky with the receiving work. But it's not a confident start for me if I'm an Alvin Kamara owner.
Yeah, Fab, in our other league we're in, I have Kamara, Mixon, and Tony Pollard and Dobbins. And like, I think I would put Dobbins, as you said, over Kamara in that one.
That's a good segue into my next hate, unless anyone else has another
comment. Bench Kamara, though.
Well, that's the thing. Like in Rodgers' case, if you have a stacked running back room and you can afford to bench Kamara because of matchups, great. But a lot of people probably don't. But
yeah, he's just that one big play away from breaking one. That's the only fear you have when you
Chargers defense in general is very good. Their defense in general is very, very good, very underrated. I find not a lot of people are talking about it. They've surrendered, like they've been very solid on passing defense and rushing defense as well.
They're stout.
Yeah, so I think, and the fact that like they don't have to really worry about the pass when it comes to the Saints, just adds to the fact that Kamara is going to have a very rough outing. It could be a good game, though, for Kendry Miller. You might see a little more between the tackles, but I'm not really sure about Kamara. The next hate that I have is Tony Pollard. Pollard. Excuse me. It's going to be Tony Pollard for me for the rest of the season, guys. Don't even scare about that. They're playing at the Detroit Lions. So this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think Tony Pollard is more inefficient when he's the lead back than when he's operating in a committee. See Dallas last year, for example, right? So with Spears being out, I don't think this will necessarily benefit Pollard. Although there's rumors and expectations that Spears might be back in week 8, but he has still yet to practice. It's still very early on in the week, but keep an eye on that. Then you throw in the fact that he's facing the Detroit defense that's giving up the second fewest fantasy points to running backs, and this really turns into a bad feeling about Pollard for week 8. I would actually bench Pollard in this matchup if I could. Tennessee will most likely be playing from behind, which again puts more negative game script on Tony Pollard. So he's 100% not a start for me. Pollard, excuse me. He's not a start for me, and I even think he finishes outside the top 25.
He's had a really solid year, I have to say. 21. He's RB 21 right now. It's been a good bounce back year.
He's been a great flex play if you drafted him. Yeah. He's had some really good games, and I just think that here against Detroit, I mean, I think apart from Aaron Jones and Kenneth Walker III that just blew up that Monday night game, like they've held their running backs in check quite a bit.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you, Fab. First matchup I hate is Matthew Stafford versus the Vikings. Heavy Thursday night football contingency here. Despite Goff's strong performance against the Vikings, I'm not optimistic about Stafford's matchup this week. The Rams' offensive line is dealing with injuries to 3 starters, and Stafford has faced the 3rd highest pressure per drop back rate at 27%. Meanwhile, the Vikings defense leads the league in pressures, blitz rate, and interceptions. While Cooper Kupp is expected to return soon, Diana Rossini reported that the Rams are open to trading him for a 2nd-round pick. Stafford is currently the QB 27 on this season. That's hard to believe. And despite his real-life talent, he's been nearly unplayable in 2 QB and Superflex leagues. And I don't think that trend is likely to change this Thursday.
Wow.
Dude,
crazy.
27.
It's crazy.
It's a different offense when both your top wide receivers are not playing. And this gives me some potential Baker Mayfield feelings going forward.
Yeah. I love Mr. Veneers, but it's not.
I feel so bad for you, Fab.
It's not looking good.
No, you don't.
You're right.
You give me the biggest cornude last night, and it came from such a genuine place after the recording. Fab, your team is really stacked, man. Honestly,
super genuine.
It was so obnoxious how
gushing.
It was so obnoxious how much
disgust. I wanted to puke.
He was interrupting. He was literally. Like Nacc was like interrupting. Like, dude, your team is so no. But look, shut up. I don't care what you're saying.
I'm like, okay, Raj, what about the recording tomorrow?
Your team is so good.
But also because I was playing him, right? So I was just like, I'm looking at his team, and I'm like, I had no chance, like 197 points he got this week or something.
Yeah,
and I'm just looking at his team. I'm like, wow.
I feel used and abused following that conversation. And quite frankly, I feel dirty right now just talking about it. Can we end the podcast early so I can take a shower?
It was a big one. It was a big one.
After your supper. I hate to do it again, guys, but second matchup I hate is Tyrone Tracy Jr. against the Steelers.
How many times we say Steelers today?
It's
a lot.
It was really hard to find.
I like it.
Too many.
I like it.
It was really hard to find some hates, but so yeah, second matchup, Tyrone Tracy Jr. at the Steelers. I do not like this matchup. Only two teams have cracked the Steelers' run defense for over 100 yards this season: the Colts with Jonathan Taylor and the aforementioned Cowboys with Rico Dowdle's performance. Both teams boasted far superior quarterback play compared to the Giants. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh is very stingy against running backs, allowing the fifth fewest fantasy points per game. While Tracy has flashed some upside, ranking as the RB24 over the past 3 weeks and averaging a dominant 71% snap share compared to Singletary's 29%, this week there are clearly better flex options. Against the Steelers, Tracy is a risky start and best left on your bench.
This game is going to finish 40-0 for the Steelers. Like straight up.
You're trying to Cornut back now?
No, I'm just being honest, Nacc. I'm just being genuine here. I'm just being honest. I really think the Steelers are going to absolutely demolish the Giants on Monday Night Football. I really, really do. This game is just me being completely honest. I don't know.
This game can be an email. Like this game can be like, we don't need to watch. Like, I don't need to watch.
I don't. Yeah, I honestly, I can just look at the box score the next day. I don't need to know the outcome.
Steelers wearing their color rush too.
What color is that? Yellow?
No, just the black with the yellow numbering.
It's the same jersey.
Bro, honestly, classic teams don't mess around with
black. Is not a color.
Don't mess around with the jerseys.
Black is not a color. Black is literally the absence of color. Black is that's not a color rush.
The jersey is black, and the numbers are yellow.
So
listen, you guys have figured out everything else except for how to get your jerseys.
Nacc, the game against the Jets, that was a throwback jersey.
When they had block numbers, the big block numbers.
That was the throwback part.
That's exactly that's the Alex Jones meme. I was really googling.
But it's like the Habs, bro. You don't change logos. I had
one tab Steelers throwback jersey. I had another tab Steelers 2024 jersey. I was like,
the throwback is they changed the font in Steelers. Yeah. That's the throwback.
It's a beautiful jersey.
They also don't have the. They also don't have the Steelers logo.
Ah, that's the difference. Can we move on?
It had no. Okay, yeah. That's all we have
on the jersey. On the jersey.
But side note though, hold on a second. Why don't they bring back Color Rush? That was a fun part of Thursday night.
No,
they don't do that anymore.
They do have it. Like they've been doing it. Green Bay had their all white.
Yeah.
Like you're saying like the mandatory one on Thursday night.
Yeah, like the Color Rush theme. Like I thought that was super. I thought that was fun.
Teams still do the Color Rush, but it's just more like it's more in prime time for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had this year. They had like Detroit had different color helmets. I think the Cardinals last night had black helmets.
Yeah,
black helmets with the red.
I hate the all black look.
The Colts had a different one this year too.
I like the all white look. I hate.
It was the Texans that went with their navy alternate jersey or something like that. That's cool. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. All right, that's all we have today, folks. Once again, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to all our social medias. Please, please, please download and listen to the episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Thanks for spending your time with us. On behalf of Fab and Nacc, I'm Raj. Thank you for listening.
Cue the music.
I wasn't sure if you froze or not. I was like,
another week in the books, boys. Wow, episode 36. 36.
We're going to hit 52 soon.
Are we doing something for episode 50? We should.
Yeah, we should. We should do a giveaway.
That's only
we're going to have champagne on air.
Should do a
so
giveaway.
If we slur a little bit, you'll know why.
Mm-hmm. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Have a good night, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.